This is the story of Maya, a young mother who, pushed to the edge by life's harsh realities, makes a heartbreaking decision to sell her baby to survive. But even in the darkest moments, hope finds a way. If you want to hear more powerful stories like this, please subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an update. The cold buzz of the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long, uneven shadows across the cracked linoleum floor of the bus terminal. Rain drummed against the grimy windows, blurring the outside world into a watercolor smear of headlights and umbrellas. Maya stood near the peeling ticket counter, clutching the fragile bundle close to her chest. The baby, swaddled tightly in a faded blanket, slept soundlessly despite the chaos around them. Her clothes were torn, stained, and damp from the rain. Her hair fell in tangled strands over sunken cheeks. Eyes hollow, like someone who had given up on herself long before tonight. Across the terminal, an older couple approached, their steps deliberate, their expensive coats brushing against the scuffed floor. The woman's heels clicked sharply. The man's polished shoes followed. Maya's hand trembled as she held out the child. "Is she healthy?" The woman's voice was soft but firm, laced with a practiced caution. Maya nodded, her throat dry. "Yes. Perfect." Behind them, near the vending machines, a man leaned casually against the wall, counting a thick stack of cash. His dark eyes flicked occasionally toward Maya and the couple, then away, as if indifferent, but not quite. The exchange was quick, businesslike. Money changed hands, crisp bills folding into Maya's palm. She glanced down at the baby, so small, so quiet, and then away, swallowing a sob. "Take good care of her," Maya whispered. The woman smiled politely, tucking the baby closer. "We will." As the couple disappeared into the night, Maya remained frozen, the noise of the terminal fading into a distant hum. Hours earlier, Maya had sat in a rundown apartment, the walls stained and cracked, the air thick with cigarette smoke and desperation. The baby's soft coos echoed in the empty space. She had been running for weeks. No job, no family, no hope. A letter from the agency had arrived that morning, the final demand for rent. Eviction was imminent. Her hand shook as she held the baby, her only link to a life she once dreamed of. But dreams don't pay bills. Someone had whispered an offer, a way out. A couple willing to pay enough to keep her from losing everything. Maya's mind raced with doubt and shame, but the dark night left her no choice. She dressed in her worn coat and stepped into the storm, clutching the baby like a fragile promise. Back in the terminal, Maya wiped her face roughly. Her legs felt weak. A small voice inside screamed, "What have you done?" But louder was the voice of survival. Tonight was a line she had crossed. But tomorrow? Tomorrow she might live. She pulled her coat tighter and disappeared into the rain, swallowed by the city's unforgiving shadows. The rain hadn't stopped when Maya found herself wandering through the darkened streets, the baby's absence an aching hollow in her arms. Her breath came in shallow gasps, the cold seeping through her thin coat and into her bones. The neon signs flickered erratically, casting eerie glows over puddles reflecting broken dreams. Her mind drifted back, to the cramped apartment she'd barely called home, to the arguments with her mother, to the nights she cried silently, alone. The baby's father was long gone, vanished before the child was born, leaving her to face a world that seemed intent on swallowing her whole. She remembered the nights without food, the cold sheets that never warmed her, and the promise she'd made when she first saw her daughter's eyes, that she'd protect her no matter the cost. But now, what kind of protection was this? Maya ducked into an alley, pressing her back to the damp bricks, trying to steady the storm of emotions raging inside. Her phone buzzed, a message from the man who had orchestrated the sale. "Good. You did right. New job. New life. Don't look back." She wanted to scream at the screen, to throw the phone into the rain, but her fingers trembled too much. Instead, she slid down the wall, burying her face in her hands. How had it come to this? Days earlier, a knock on the door had shattered her fragile routine. A sharply dressed man introduced himself as an agent, a man who promised a solution to her spiraling nightmare. Money in exchange for her child. Maya had recoiled, horrified. She was a mother. Selling her baby? Impossible. But hunger and fear had strangled her resolve. When the eviction notice arrived, and the landlord threatened to change the locks, desperation whispered lies that maybe this was the only way out. Now, with the baby gone, Maya was adrift. Her dreams felt shattered, her heart raw. Yet somewhere, beneath the guilt and the sorrow, a flicker of something stubborn refused to die, the will to survive, to find redemption, to one day face herself without fear. She rose, wiped the rain from her cheeks, and stepped back into the cold night. Maya wandered through the empty streets, the rain beginning to ease, leaving a misty sheen on the cracked pavement. Her footsteps echoed softly as she passed shuttered storefronts and flickering street lamps. The city, indifferent and relentless, moved around her like a storm she couldn't outrun. She found herself in a small park, where the skeletal branches of trees reached toward the gray sky. A bench offered a fragile promise of rest. She sat, folding her hands in her lap, trying to hold back the flood of memories and tears. Suddenly, a soft voice interrupted her solitude. "Are you okay?" Maya looked up to see a woman, perhaps in her late 30s, wearing a worn jacket and carrying a tote bag filled with groceries. There was something gentle in her eyes, not pity, but understanding. "I'm fine," Maya lied, her voice barely audible. The woman sat beside her without asking more questions. "I'm Rosa," she said. "I work at the shelter down the street. We help women who find themselves in tough spots." Maya hesitated, but something about Rosa's presence eased the tight knot in her chest. "I don't know where to go," Maya whispered. Rosa nodded knowingly. "You're not alone. And sometimes the hardest step is just talking to someone." For the first time in weeks, Maya shared her story, the eviction, the loneliness, the fear of not being enough, and the unbearable choice she made tonight. Rosa listened, never interrupting, her eyes softening with every word. "When you're ready," Rosa said, "we have places where you can sleep, food you can eat, and people who want to help." Maya swallowed hard. The words felt like a lifeline tossed into the dark. She nodded slowly, a small spark lighting within. As the dawn broke, Maya walked toward the shelter with Rosa by her side. The world felt less cold, less hostile. Somewhere deep inside, amidst the pain and regret, hope had found a fragile home. The shelter was a small brick building tucked between a laundromat and a convenience store. Its faded sign read Hope Haven in peeling white letters. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee, but there was warmth, both physical and emotional, that Maya hadn't felt in weeks. Rosa led her through a narrow hallway to a small room with a cot, a worn dresser, and a threadbare blanket. It was nothing fancy, but it was safe. "Here," Rosa said, placing a brown paper bag filled with food on the bedside table. "Eat when you're ready. And if you need anything, we're here." Maya nodded, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. Later, as she lay on the cot, she thought of the baby, the little life she had given away in desperation. A surge of guilt swept over her, threatening to drown out the fragile hope Rosa had kindled. But as she closed her eyes, she made a promise to herself to find a way back, not just for her, but for her child. The next morning, Maya joined a small group of women in the common room. Some were young, like her. Others were older, each carrying their own stories of hardship. There was no judgment here, only a shared understanding. One woman, named Tasha, sat beside her and smiled gently. "We've all had our battles," Tasha said, "but we're stronger because of them." Maya felt a spark of belonging, a connection she hadn't realized she'd been craving. Days turned into weeks. With the shelter's support, Maya began searching for work. It wasn't easy, gaps in her resume, no stable address, and the heavy weight of her secret made every step difficult. Yet, each morning she pushed forward, fueled by the hope that someday she'd reunite with her baby, or at least build a life worthy of forgiveness. Just as Maya began to settle into the slow rhythm of shelter life, a shadow from her past crept into her fragile peace. One chilly afternoon, as she waited in line for a hot meal, she felt a sharp glance across the room. There, near the entrance, stood a familiar face, her mother. Maya's heart froze. Her mother's eyes scanned the room, landing on her with a mix of anger, disappointment, and something else Maya couldn't quite place. Before Maya could move, her mother's voice cut through the chatter. "So this is what you've become?" she said bitterly, voice low but clear. Maya's throat tightened. She wanted to run, to disappear. Instead, she stood her ground. "I did what I had to do," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. Her mother scoffed. "You sold your baby. You're no better than the worst of them." The words stung deeper than Maya expected. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she swallowed them down. "I'm trying to survive," she said quietly. Her mother shook her head and turned away, leaving Maya standing amidst the murmurs of the shelter. That night, Maya lay awake, the confrontation replaying in her mind. The bitterness, the accusations, they cut her deeper than any rain-soaked night or cold bench ever could. But there was a strange relief, too. The secret was out. Maybe now, she could stop hiding. The next day, Maya found Rosa and shared the encounter. Rosa nodded, understanding. "Family can be our greatest support or our hardest battle," she said. "But your worth isn't defined by their opinions." Maya absorbed the words, feeling a quiet strength building inside. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Maya began to find her footing. The shelter's routine, simple meals, support groups, and quiet moments became the anchor she desperately needed. She found a part-time job at a nearby cafe, washing dishes and cleaning tables. The work was hard, the hours long, but every paycheck was a step closer to independence. One afternoon, after her shift, Maya sat alone on a bench outside. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows, and she pulled her coat tighter around her. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from the man who had facilitated the sale. Payment sent. No more contact. Stay safe. A pang of anger and sorrow shot through her chest. She deleted the message without replying. Her life was hers now, even if it was broken. At the shelter, Maya started attending group therapy sessions. Listening to others' stories, sharing her own, she began to unravel the tangled threads of shame and guilt. One night, a counselor asked, "What does forgiveness look like to you?" Maya thought long and hard. "To me," she said quietly, "forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's learning to live with the past without letting it destroy the future." The room was silent, but Maya felt a quiet applause rising inside her heart. She still thought of her daughter every day, every moment. But now, instead of overwhelming despair, there was a fragile hope. One day, Maya would find her again. And maybe, just maybe, they'd both find healing. Part 7, A Chance Encounter. The morning air was crisp and biting as Maya hurried down the cracked sidewalks toward her job at the cafe. Her worn shoes barely made a sound on the wet pavement, but inside her chest, her heart hammered like a drum. The city had a way of swallowing people whole, and Maya felt herself slipping deeper into its indifferent shadows. She was tired. So tired. But still, she kept moving. As she rounded a corner near the bus terminal, something caught her eye, a weathered poster taped crookedly to a street lamp. The edges curled from rain and wind, and the faded photo showed a baby wrapped in a worn blanket. Underneath, bold letters read, "Missing child, last seen near bus terminal. Please help." Maya's breath hitched. Her fingers trembled as she brushed the poster with her palm, almost afraid it would disappear like a ghost. She pulled back and stared at the phone number printed below. Her mind raced. That baby. Her baby. Could it be? Doubt and hope collided violently within her. 1,000 questions flooded her thoughts. Was her daughter safe? Had she been found? Was this a cruel coincidence, or a chance for redemption? Maya's hand shook as she pulled out her own phone. The urge to call the number nearly overwhelmed her, but fear stopped her. What if she brought danger to her child? What if it was a trap? What if she wasn't ready? Her thoughts spiraled, drowning her in uncertainty. "Hey, are you okay?" Startled, Maya turned to see a young man standing a few feet away. He was dressed casually, with warm brown eyes that held genuine concern. "I didn't mean to scare you," he added softly. Maya forced a shaky smile. "No, I'm fine." The man hesitated, then stepped a little closer. "Sometimes this city feels like it's too much. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." His words surprised her. Nobody ever noticed the pain she wore like a second skin. "I guess I am," she admitted quietly. He nodded, as if understanding exactly what she meant. "I'm Jonah. I work nearby. If you ever need to talk, or just someone to sit with, I'm around." Maya's eyes filled with tears she tried to hold back. "Thank you. That means more than you know." They stood there for a moment, the noise of the city fading into the background. Jonah glanced at the poster. "You know, sometimes reaching out for help can be the hardest step, but you don't have to do it alone." Maya swallowed the lump in her throat. "I want to believe that." Jonah smiled gently. "Then maybe today is the day." That afternoon, Maya sat in a small park near her workplace, the sunlight filtering through the autumn leaves. Jonah had invited her to join a community support group he ran for people facing tough times. No judgment, just real people sharing real stories. The room was humble, a circle of mismatched chairs, walls adorned with posters about hope and healing. Maya listened as others shared their struggles and small victories. When it was her turn, she hesitated, then spoke softly about losing her baby, the desperate choice she made, and the unbearable loneliness. No one interrupted. No one judged. They nodded, some with tears in their eyes. When she finished, a woman reached out, squeezing Maya's hand. "You're stronger than you think," she said. For the first time, Maya felt a fragile seed of hope taking root. That night, as Maya lay on the shelter cot, she stared at the ceiling and thought about the poster, the baby, and the stranger who had offered her kindness. Maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. She didn't know where it led, but she was willing to take the first step. The next morning, Maya woke to the sound of rain tapping softly against the shelter's window. The gray sky matched the weight in her heart, but there was a quiet determination brewing inside her. At breakfast, Rosa handed Maya a folded envelope. "This came for you," she said gently. Maya's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter from a social services agency, accompanied by a court summons. Her breath caught. The words were sharp and cold, a legal proceeding about the custody of her child. Panic surged, but Maya forced herself to breathe deeply. She wasn't the same woman who had stood in that bus terminal days ago. She knew this was a crossroads. Over the next days, Maya met with a social worker who explained the process. The system was complicated and cold, but there were ways she could try to regain custody if she proved she could provide a safe environment. Maya's heart ached with hope and fear. She had to face the past and fight for a future. At the shelter, Rosa and the women gathered around Maya, offering support and encouragement. "You're not alone," Rosa said. "We'll help you every step of the way." Maya smiled through tears. For the first time, she felt a strength that wasn't just hers, but born from community and care. The court date loomed like a storm on the horizon, but Maya was ready to face it head-on. No matter what happened, she would fight for her child, for love, redemption, and a chance at a new life. The day of the court hearing arrived with a cold, gray sky hanging low over the city. Maya dressed in the simple but clean clothes Rosa had helped her find. Her hand shook as she clutched the small notebook where she had written down everything: plans, evidence of her job, her progress at the shelter. The courthouse was intimidating, a grand building with heavy doors and marble steps. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and quiet authority. Maya sat in the waiting room, heart pounding as she watched other families come and go. Some hopeful, others resigned. When her name was called, Maya stood and walked into the courtroom. The room was filled with people: a judge, lawyers, social workers, and the older couple who had bought her baby. Her throat tightened as the couple sat stiffly on one side, expressions unreadable. The judge's voice was firm but fair as the hearing began. Maya listened carefully, answering questions honestly. She spoke about her struggles, her time at the shelter, her job, and her commitment to becoming the mother her daughter deserved. Tears came unbidden as she described her love for her child, a love that had never faded, even through the darkest moments. The courtroom was silent, the tension thick. Finally, the judge adjourned the session to consider the case. Maya stepped outside into the cold air, trembling but with a flicker of hope burning inside her. Days passed in agonizing silence as Maya waited for the court's decision. Every morning, she found herself staring out the shelter window, watching the city bustle around her, feeling both lost and hopeful. Finally, a letter arrived, official, stamped, and heavy with meaning. Maya unfolded it with trembling hands. The court had decided to grant her supervised visitation rights. It wasn't everything she wanted, but it was a start. Tears streamed down her face, a mix of relief, sorrow, and determination. She called Rosa immediately, who held her through the phone, sharing the moment of fragile victory. The first visit with her daughter was arranged in a small, neutral room filled with toys and soft light. When Maya saw the child's curious eyes looking up at her, wrapped once again in a warm blanket, her heart shattered and mended all at once. They didn't say much at first, but the silent connection spoke volumes, a mother and daughter trying to find their way back to each other. Maya knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but now she had hope, a chance, a new beginning.